Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Turnaround Marriage Live. We are Scott and Rachel, and we do help committed Christian couples finally end the cycles of conflict and disconnection and reclaim the love, passion, and playfulness that they once had. So if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to go ahead and hit that like button. Let us know you're here. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the little bell to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our content, and go ahead and like and share that as well. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking about the thing that most couples come to us about, which is conflict. And we're going to ask you the question, is conflict destroying your marriage? Conflict is a big problem that we see every single day, don't we?
It is.
Let me do that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I need lots of help, more than just something on my nose, by the way.
Don't we
all? So we do. And you're right, Rachel. And it is something that we talk to a lot of couples, and it's something that we see every day. And it's kind of like the natural default when things aren't going right. So we'll get on the phone, we'll talk with people, and they will identify different things that have caused a lot of stress in their marriage, and they'll point to those points of conflict as the source of trouble. And sometimes they believe that if they remove that one source of conflict or trouble, that everything's going to be okay. So one of the big things we hear is like financial stress, like, oh, we just got this huge burden, or something happened to the house and it's like we owe all this money. And then they're fighting about it, and it's all we have to do is get out of this financial strain, and everything's going to be okay. Of course, it's a stress, but that isn't the only problem. It feels like it might be, but it isn't the only problem.
Right.
Another big one that we hear, we talked about this a few lives ago when we were talking about the political climate in the world. In fact, I even heard one woman said recently, like, my husband just told me that he wanted a divorce, and the main reason was because we're just polar opposites politically. And they just saw no way out of it. And she was saying, he thinks that, and maybe he's right. Maybe there is no way forward. It's all these stressors because of the politics, and then for a lot of people, it can look like, health complications. Like, we didn't know what in sickness and in health meant sometimes. And it can get even trickier when the fighting within the marriage has caused some of these health issues through the stress. But they'll point to these different things. All we have to do is get through them, and things are going to get better. And I'm sure you can think of a few more.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking of even job stress. I know that for many of you now, you're working from home. You don't have the outlet to, be in the office and be interacting with others as much. And let's face it, Zoom isn't quite the same, right? And online meetings aren't quite the same. And maybe you're spending more time with your spouse in a cooped up area, and you don't really have the setup that you want. Or maybe your boss is like many bosses, and they're constantly asking for more with less of your more from you with less pay or not as much time to do it. And so you feel the stressors of, how do I get all this done? How do I keep all these balls juggling? And it can feel like, oh, if I just got a different job, that would be the thing. If I just could, alleviate the job stress, now we won't fight anymore. But we have found that's not always the case. And I think kids is a big one, right? Kids, it can be a major source of conflict if the way you're raising your kids, you're not on the same page, you're not on the same team, you see things differently. One of you is more of a disciplinarian, one of you is more of the fun parent, right? And then there can cause this tension. Or you have a problem child, it's himself or herself, and you're like, oh, this one kid, if we could just kick them out, if we could just
get them out of the house,
deal with them, or if we could
get them off to college.
Yeah. Handle that problem, things would be so much better. And we have found over and over again that is not always the case. Of course, we've heard of in-laws and extended family and stressors, outside the home that can be coming in. And it's really anything that can come between us. And of course, blended families is a big one that for couples that come to us for help, because blended families have a unique challenge, her kids, my kids, our kids. And who's the real parent, right? And who is the disciplinarian? And are you connecting with them? And all of those kinds of things. And it can feel like there's all these stressors coming at you from all these different directions. And at the end of the day, is conflict the main thing that's the problem in the marriage? That's the question we're going to ask.
Yeah, it is. And if we'll just get real here for a moment, just for people to know, in our own story, we have 4 biological children. We also have 2 adoptive children. And when we adopted our 2 adoptive children, we already had the biological children. And this created conflict. And we could have known to some degree, but in many ways we didn't know their story. We didn't know the things that they had been through, and we didn't know what that was going to look like for us. And therein lied the challenge for us with conflict between us. And we could have, as some of people that we've known, could blame the children, biological or adoptive, for the problems.
Right.
But we realized that it was the way that we were doing things. And so for us, it kind of looked like, I mean, it got dark at times. I mean, it was really not pretty.
Yeah.
And you saw things one way as a mom. I saw things another way as a dad, and also with our unique stories. And we came at the situation different angles. It wasn't that one of us was right and one of us was wrong. In fact, both of us had some valid points we see now.
I thought I was right.
Well, yes, under the table. Yes, we as we look back, we can see it with such clarity. But at the time, we didn't see. It just felt like, what are we doing? Like, and at times, I mean, I even blame the kids, but they weren't to blame.
No.
And we realize that now, and that looked really not pretty at times.
It was some of our darkest days, because we were coming at the same problem from different points of view, the same challenge, I should say,
Right.
from different points of view. And, you can have two sides of the same coin. Both of them can be right. Both of them can be true and valid at the same time. But if you're allowing those two different viewpoints to rip you apart instead of pull you together, therein is the source of the conflict. So, our biggest belief is that it's not that the external things so much are causing the conflict. Those can exacerbate problems. But for our story, what the adoption did was it rose to the surface the things that were already there and underneath.
Yep.
And now we had a new thing to argue about, right? But it was really the fact that there were certain things we didn't talk about, and it was the fact that we really weren't operating as a team, and there was
Right.
the fact that we saw things from different points of view without validating the other person. And so, if you're finding yourself in the midst of conflict and you're just like, oh, if we could just handle her one kid, or if we could just deal with this job, or if we could just handle this one thing, we're here to tell you the challenges are going to keep coming. The challenges are going to keep coming. There is no shortage of things to have conflict about. And so it's not the conflict itself that is the trouble. What is the real trouble is, how are you handling it? Are you handling it as a team, or are you dismissing the other person, being critical, being short-tempered? And in your body language, are you, saying, well, your point of view is stupid, and I'm right? Or are we handling this from a different point of view, where you're trying to see how the other person sees the world and see how they view the problem?
So, yeah, and you're right. And so let me ask you, can conflict destroy a marriage?
We've seen that it absolutely can, but we've also seen that conflict can be the thing that draws you together like nothing else in this world.
It's so true.
Yeah. I mean, we were joking about like different romance movies.
Well, yeah, like what romance movie doesn't have conflict, right? They all do. Like,
Right.
That's why we watch them, is because of the conflict and how they navigate that, whether that's external conflict or conflict between the two of them. We watch
a misunderstanding, or
I won't even throw it out, but so many of them are like, they're like, maybe they're almost like enemies and then they fall in love. Those kind of movies are silly sometimes. Imagine a romance movie that didn't have conflict in it. It'd be kind of, boring, wouldn't it?
It'd be so boring, right? Any movie without a climax, without a challenge to overcome, without something that seems like there's no way you could overcome the odds. Like, a movie without that is boring. Nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah, and if you had a movie, just to add on, like, imagine one where they're like, there's conflict. That's not worth it. We're just going to go our separate ways.
Yeah, that would be the dumbest romance movie ever. Like, we're falling in love, there's this big challenge, and oh, you know what? This is stupid, and let's just give up.
Yes, so we know innately that conflict should be part of the beautiful story. We do know this.
Yeah.
We know that it should be weaved together in not just like getting through it, but it's part of growing you together as a couple and as a family, that it makes you guys stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my goodness, you think of all the stories going on in Ukraine and other places throughout history, where, you think of like, what was life on the frontier of America back in the day?
Yeah.
Were they weak families, or were they incredibly strong?
Yeah.
They came together.
Strong and resilient
Yes.
because of what they had been through,
Yes.
because of what they had overcome, and
Yes.
because they had had to do it as a team and work together. And so if you're out there and you're in the midst of just so much conflict in your home and the two of you cannot see eye to eye and you don't feel like a teammates or, or lovers, you feel more like enemies. We're here to tell you, if you could begin to approach the situation differently, try to
Yes.
see things from their point of view, and don't feel like you have to just be right in the situation, because both of you can be right at the same time. I remember in our situation, we were both right about what we believed, but we just dismissed the other person because it wasn't our viewpoint.
You're so right. And this is what we see all the time. Like I've heard boy, if I got $1 every time someone I heard say this, men say, well, when there's conflict, I just have to avoid it. Now, sometimes women do it too.
Yeah.
But usually it's the men. And the women are tend to be kind of like, well, he's running from it and I want to get his attention. I want to get his help. And so I pursue him. But what does that usually look like?
Looks like pushing buttons and provocation, maybe,
Yes.
and trying to basically get a rise out of them because you want to engage, you want to handle it. And if
Yep.
they're running from it and you're you're chasing them. We had that dance for many years in our marriage, and it's like an exhausting dance, and it is no fun.
Yeah,
it is no fun at
it's
all.
a vicious cycle. And when you get there, it can feel really hopeless because the more you're trying to get your husband's attention or vice versa, and the more they're running away, the more you're pressing the buttons to get their attention, and it just creates more tension, more anger, more fighting, more distance, more disconnect, and that's not a recipe for solving anything. So when we can realize, instead of running from conflict, that conflict could actually be something that could be part of your story to make you even stronger. That's actually what we teach our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what is that's possible?
Not just make you stronger, but actually even grow closer in intimacy, because as you navigate that,
right.
and you
so
begin
right.
to see the other person's point of view, there's now a new closeness and a new perspective that you didn't have before.
So true.
And so, like, we're here to tell you, to avoid conflict is a recipe for disaster, because when things are swept under the rug and not talked about in certain taboo subjects, it leads to disconnection at the heart, and then at the mind, and then at the soul level, and on it goes.
Body
and it will eventually rip you apart. And so if that's you out there, we have enormous helpful shifts in our free masterclass online, which is called the 5-Step Strategy Christian Couples Use to Completely Turn Their Marriage Around Quickly, Recover Intimacy, and Fall Back in Love Again. And incredible amounts of help. This has helped thousands of people to really begin to have that turnaround in their marriage.
So go to turnaroundmarriage.com/class and you can check that out.
Yeah. So we're here to tell you, conflict does not have to destroy your marriage. It does not have to be the thing that rips you apart. You can learn how to use it to actually grow closer together, grow stronger. And so that's what we have for you today on this edition of Turn Around Marriage Live. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.